Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes.
Back again.
Today we're diving into competitive advantage, creating and sustaining superior performance.
I'm Michael E. Porter.
That's right, by Michael E. Porter, a book that's considered, a cornerstone of business strategy.
Yeah. So this is a deep dive for sure.
It is a deep dive.
This book is
This one's a really meaty one.
it's packed with frameworks and concepts that can help companies, really anyone, analyze their competitive landscape and develop strategies to outperform their rivals.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, can you give our listeners a quick overview of the main themes Porter explores in the book? What are the big ideas that we'll be unpacking today?
Sure. Think of it this way. Porter argues that achieving a sustainable competitive advantage, the kind that leads to long-term profitability, requires companies to make deliberate choices about how they compete. He introduces frameworks like the 5 forces, generic strategies, and the value chain to help companies analyze their industry, their rivals, and their own internal capabilities.
So it's about understanding the rules of the game and then figuring out how to play it better than anyone else.
Exactly. And Porter emphasizes that this isn't just about intuition or guesswork. He provides a structured, analytical approach to strategy development, encouraging companies to base their decisions on data and rigorous analysis.
That sounds right up our listeners' alley. They're all about gaining knowledge quickly but thoroughly.
I think they'll appreciate Porter's systematic approach. He doesn't shy away from complexity, but he presents his ideas in a clear and compelling way.
Yeah.
And he backs them up with real-world examples.
Speaking of real-world examples, Porter's book is over 35 years old. Is it still relevant in today's, rapidly evolving business landscape?
That's what's so remarkable about this book. The fundamentals of competition haven't really changed, even though the technologies and industries have evolved dramatically. The principles Porter lays out are timeless and adaptable.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Porter kicks things off with a discussion of industry structure, and he introduces his famous 5 forces framework. Can you walk us through that for our listener? What are these 5 forces and why are they so important for understanding competition?
The 5 forces are essentially the external pressures that shape the competitive landscape within an industry. They determine how much profit potential there is in an industry and how that profit is distributed among the players.
So it's not just about how good you are at what you do. The structure of the industry itself plays a huge role in determining whether you'll be successful or not.
Exactly. The 5 forces can make an industry incredibly attractive, with high profits for everyone, or they can make it a bloodbath, where even the best companies struggle to survive.
That makes sense. So what are these 5 forces that hold such sway over a company's fate?
First up, you have the threat of new entrants. This force looks at how easy or difficult it is for new companies to enter the market and start competing. If there are high barriers to entry, such as high capital requirements, strong brand loyalty, or government regulations, it's tougher for newcomers to gain a foothold.
Right.
That's good news for existing players because it means less competition and potentially higher profits. But if it's easy for anyone to set up shop, then the industry becomes more crowded, rivalry heats up, and profits tend to get squeezed.
So you're saying that a company needs to understand how protected its industry is from new competition.
Absolutely. And the second force is the bargaining power of buyers. This looks at how much leverage customers have to drive down prices.
Yeah.
If there are only a few big buyers and lots of suppliers, the buyers hold the cards. They can demand lower prices, better terms, and more favorable conditions. But if there are many buyers, each with relatively small purchases, the power dynamic shifts in favor of the suppliers.
It's like a game of supply and demand, but played out at the industry level.
That's a great way to put it. And the third force, which is closely related, is the bargaining power of suppliers. This flips the script and looks at how much power suppliers have to raise their prices or dictate terms to the companies they sell to.
Okay.
If there are only a few suppliers of a critical input, they can essentially call the shots. They can raise prices, demand preferential treatment, and even control the flow of essential materials. If a company is heavily reliant on a powerful supplier, it can significantly impact its profitability.
This is starting to feel a bit like a pressure cooker for businesses.
Well, it can be, and it gets even more intense when you consider the fourth force, the threat of substitute products or services.
Okay.
This force considers how likely it is that a product or service from outside the industry could come along and fulfill the same customer need, potentially better or cheaper.
Right.
If there are readily available substitutes, it puts a ceiling on how much a company can charge for its products or services. And if a particularly attractive substitute emerges, it can completely disrupt the industry.
So a company needs to be constantly looking over its shoulder, not just at its direct competitors, but also at potential threats from outside the industry.
Exactly. A company that gets too comfortable with its current position might be blindsided by a substitute that seemingly comes out of nowhere. Think about what digital cameras did to the film photography industry, or what streaming services are doing to cable television. These substitutes can radically reshape an industry's landscape.
That's a great point. Okay, so we've covered four forces so far. What's the fifth and final one?
The fifth force, and perhaps the most obvious one, is the rivalry among existing competitors.
Okay.
This looks at how intense the competition is among the companies already battling it out in the industry. If rivalry is fierce, it can lead to price wars, aggressive marketing campaigns, constant innovation to one-up each other, and a general erosion of profitability.
Yeah.
Conversely, if rivalry is more subdued, companies might be able to enjoy higher profits and a more stable competitive environment.
So even if a company has a great product or service, if it's operating in an industry with cutthroat competition, its success isn't guaranteed.
That's right. And the interesting thing about these five forces is that they can interact with each other in complex ways. A change in one force can trigger a cascade of effects that ripple through the entire industry. For example, if the threat of new entrants increases, it can intensify rivalry among existing players as they fight to defend their market share.
So it's not enough to just analyze each force in isolation. You need to understand how they all fit together and how they might influence each other.
Exactly. And that's what makes Porter's Five Forces framework so powerful. It provides a holistic view of the competitive landscape, allowing companies to see the big picture and develop strategies that take into account all of the relevant factors.
That makes sense. So a company that understands these five forces is in a much better position to craft a winning strategy. But where does it go from there? How does it actually translate this understanding into a concrete plan of action?
Well, that's where Porter's next big concept comes into play, the generic strategies. He argues that there are essentially three fundamental ways a company can achieve a competitive advantage.
Okay, let's unpack those.
The first generic strategy is cost leadership. This involves becoming the lowest cost producer in the industry.
Right.
If you can make your products or services more cheaply than your competitors, you have a couple of options. You can either undercut them on price and gain market share, or you can maintain similar prices but enjoy fatter profit margins. Companies like Walmart and Southwest Airlines have built their entire business models around being the cost leader.
That's interesting. But what about those companies that don't want to compete on price? What are their options?
That brings us to the second generic strategy, differentiation. This is about offering unique products or services that customers are willing to pay a premium for. It could be based on superior quality, innovative features, exceptional customer service, a strong brand image, or any other factor that sets you apart from the competition. Think of companies like Apple with its sleek design and user-friendly products, or a luxury car brand like BMW, which focuses on performance and prestige.
So it's about finding what you're uniquely good at and then highlighting those strengths to create a perception of value that justifies a higher price.
Exactly. And the third generic strategy is focus. This involves concentrating on a specific niche market or segment. Instead of trying to be everything to everyone, you become a specialist in serving a particular group of customers with very specific needs. This could be a demographic group, a geographic region, a product category, or any other well-defined segment.
So a company that adopts a focus strategy might choose to serve only high net worth individuals
Mhm.
or focus exclusively on providing software solutions for the healthcare industry. It's about becoming so good at serving a specific niche that you dominate it.
Precisely. Now, Porter is very clear that these generic strategies are not mutually exclusive. A company could, for example, pursue both cost leadership and differentiation, creating a powerful combination. However, he cautions against trying to do all three at once,
Why is that?
because he believes that trying to be all things to all people can lead to mediocrity. He calls this being stuck in the middle. If you try to be the cheapest, the most differentiated, and the most focused, you're likely to end up being none of those things. You spread yourself too thin and lose your competitive edge.
So it's about making deliberate choices and committing to a clear strategic direction, You can't be everything to everyone. You have to pick your battles and focus your resources on what matters most.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial concept in Porter's framework, the value chain.
Okay, I've heard that term thrown around a lot in business school. What exactly is the value chain, and how does it fit into the broader picture of competitive advantage?
The value chain is essentially a way of breaking down all the activities a company performs, from procuring raw materials to delivering the final product or service to the customer, into a series of interconnected steps.
Okay.
It's like a step-by-step map of everything that goes into creating and delivering value to the customer.
So it helps companies understand how each part of their business contributes to the overall value proposition.
Exactly. And by analyzing each link in this chain, companies can identify areas where they can create cost advantages, differentiate themselves, or do both.
So, for example, a manufacturing company might find that it can reduce costs by streamlining its production processes or by negotiating better deals with its suppliers.
That's right. Or a retail company might find that it can differentiate itself by providing exceptional customer service or by offering a wider selection of products.
It seems like understanding your value chain is essential for figuring out where your company excels and where it might need to improve.
Absolutely. It's a powerful tool for identifying your strengths and weaknesses, pinpointing opportunities for improvement, and developing strategies to enhance your competitive position. And what's particularly insightful about Porter's value chain framework is that it highlights the importance of linkages.
Linkages, what are those?
Linkages refer to the relationships between different activities in the value chain.
Okay.
Porter points out that the way you perform one activity can often affect the cost or effectiveness of other activities.
Right.
For instance, if you invest in better quality control during manufacturing, it might reduce the number of defective products, which could in turn reduce the costs associated with returns and customer service.
So it's about seeing the big picture and understanding how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together.
Exactly. It's not enough to just optimize each activity in isolation. You need to think about how your choices in one area might impact other areas of the business.
This is getting pretty complex.
It can be, but that's the nature of strategy. It's about making decisions that involve trade-offs, considering the interconnectedness of different parts of the business, and ultimately finding ways to create a sustainable competitive advantage.
So we've covered the 5 forces, the generic strategies, and the value chain. That's a lot to process. But I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface of what Porter has to offer. I'm eager to dive deeper into the rest of the book and explore his insights on technology, competitive dynamics, and all the other fascinating topics he covers. What do you say we take a quick break and come back to tackle those in part 2?
Sounds like a plan. There's much more to explore in Porter's world of competitive advantage. See you in part 2.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Michael E. Porter's competitive advantage.
I'm ready to keep exploring. We left off talking about the value chain and how understanding its intricacies can give a company an edge. But Porter doesn't stop there, does he? What other powerful concepts does he introduce to help companies navigate the competitive landscape? One of the things that sets Porter's work apart is his emphasis on the dynamic nature of competition. He doesn't see competitive advantage as a static end state, but as an ongoing process of adaptation and response. He dedicates a significant portion of the book to exploring what he calls competitive dynamics, how companies react to each other's moves and counter-moves in the marketplace.
So it's not enough to just develop a brilliant strategy. You also need to be able to anticipate how your competitors will react and be prepared to adjust your own plans accordingly.
Exactly. Porter argues that companies need to develop a deep understanding of their rivals' goals, motivations, strengths, and weaknesses. He introduces the concept of competitor analysis, which involves gathering information about your competitors, analyzing their past behavior, and trying to predict their future actions.
Sounds a bit like a game of chess where you're trying to anticipate your opponent's next move and plan your own strategy accordingly.
That's a great analogy. And Porter provides a framework for thinking about competitor analysis that includes identifying your key competitors, assessing their current strategies, evaluating their resources and capabilities, and anticipating their likely responses to your own actions.
So you're not just reacting to what your competitors are doing, you're also trying to proactively shape the competitive landscape to your advantage.
That's right. Porter talks about the importance of signaling your intentions to your competitors. This could involve making public announcements about your plans, investing in visible assets that demonstrate your commitment to a particular market, or even engaging in preemptive strikes to deter competitors from entering your territory.
It's almost like a form of psychological warfare in the business world.
It can be. And Porter emphasizes that competitive dynamics are not just about aggression and attack. He also talks about the potential benefits of cooperation with competitors. In some cases, it might make sense for companies to collaborate on industry standards, joint ventures, or other initiatives that benefit the entire industry.
That seems counterintuitive. Yeah. Why would companies that are competing with each other ever want to cooperate?
Well, in some situations, cooperation can create a win-win situation.
Right.
For example, if companies in a particular industry can work together to establish a common technology standard, it can reduce costs for everyone, expand the overall market, and make it easier to attract new customers. Or if companies can pool their resources to develop a new product or enter a new market, it can reduce their individual risks and accelerate the pace of innovation.
I see. So it's not always a zero-sum game. Sometimes working together can actually make everyone better off.
Exactly. But Porter cautions that cooperation with competitors should always be approached with caution. It's important to have clear agreements in place, monitor the relationship closely, and be prepared to walk away if the terms of the agreement are no longer beneficial.
That makes sense. Now, one of the things that struck me as I was reading the book was Porter's emphasis on the importance of understanding how costs behave within a company. Can you elaborate on that a bit? Why is cost analysis so crucial for developing a successful strategy?
Porter argues that many companies have a superficial understanding of their cost structure. They know what their overall costs are, but they don't have a deep understanding of what's driving those costs or how they compare to their competitors' costs.
So it's not enough to just know your total expenses.
Yeah.
You need to dig deeper and figure out where those costs are coming from and why.
Exactly. Porter provides a detailed framework for analyzing costs, which he calls cost analysis. This involves breaking down the value chain into individual activities and examining the cost drivers for each activity.
Remind me again, what are cost drivers?
Cost drivers are the factors that influence the cost of performing a particular activity. They can be things like economies of scale, learning effects, location choices, technology choices, and even government policies.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, a company that produces huge volumes of a product might benefit from economies of scale, meaning their per unit costs go down as they produce more. But another company might find that its costs are more sensitive to location, say if it relies on a highly skilled workforce that's concentrated in a particular region.
Exactly. And the key to cost analysis is to identify the cost drivers that are most important for your particular business and then figure out how to manage them effectively. This might involve finding ways to increase your economies of scale, improve your learning curve, relocate your operations to a lower cost location, or adopt new technologies that reduce your production costs.
So it's about being strategic with your cost management. It's not just about cutting costs across the board. It's about understanding the nuances of your cost structure and making targeted investments that will give you a competitive advantage.
That's right. And Porter emphasizes that cost analysis should not be done in isolation. It needs to be linked to the overall strategy of the company. If you're pursuing a cost leadership strategy, for example, your cost analysis should be focused on identifying ways to become the lowest cost producer in the industry. But if you're pursuing a differentiation strategy, your cost analysis should be focused on finding ways to reduce costs in areas that don't impact your differentiation.
So you might be willing to spend more on certain activities if they contribute to your unique value proposition, even if it means your overall costs are higher than your competitors.
Exactly. It's all about making strategic choices and finding the right balance between cost and differentiation.
Now, we've talked a lot about cost analysis, but what about the other side of the coin, differentiation? How does Porter approach the challenge of creating and sustaining differentiation in a competitive market?
Porter dedicates a whole chapter to differentiation, arguing that it's just as important as cost leadership when it comes to achieving a sustainable competitive advantage. He emphasizes that differentiation is not just about having a slightly better product or service, it's about creating genuine value for the customer that they're willing to pay a premium for.
So you need to understand what your customers truly value and then find ways to deliver that value better than anyone else.
Exactly. And just like with cost analysis, Porter provides a framework for analyzing differentiation. He encourages companies to examine each activity in the value chain and ask, how can we make this activity unique in a way that creates value for our customers? This might involve using higher quality materials, investing in more skilled labor, developing innovative features, or providing exceptional customer service. The key is to find ways to stand out from the competition and create a perception of value that justifies a higher price.
It seems like differentiation is all about creating a story around your product or service that resonates with your target customers.
That's a great way to put it. It's about building a brand, crafting a narrative, and creating an emotional connection with your customers that goes beyond the functional attributes of your offerings. And Porter stresses that differentiation is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process of innovation, adaptation, and customer engagement. You need to constantly be looking for ways to improve your offerings, stay ahead of the competition, and keep your customers coming back for more.
This is really resonating with me. It seems like Porter's framework is all about being intentional and making deliberate choices about how you compete.
That's a great observation. He emphasizes the importance of having a clear strategic direction, aligning all aspects of your business with that strategy, and making trade-offs to ensure that you're focusing your resources on what matters most.
I'm also curious about his perspective on technology. We're living in an era of rapid technological change, where new innovations are constantly emerging and disrupting industries. How does technology fit into Porter's framework for competitive advantage?
Porter recognized the transformative power of technology even back in the 1980s when he wrote Competitive Advantage. He dedicates a whole chapter to exploring the relationship between technology and competitive advantage, arguing that technology is not just a tool, but a strategic weapon that can be used to create and sustain a competitive edge.
So it's not just about adopting the latest gadgets. It's about understanding how technology can be used to fundamentally change the way you compete.
Exactly. Porter highlights several ways that technology can impact competitive advantage. First, it can be a driver of cost leadership. New technologies can automate processes, reduce waste, improve efficiency, and ultimately lower production costs. Companies that are early adopters of these technologies can gain a significant cost advantage over their rivals.
We see this all the time in manufacturing, where companies are using robotics and automation to streamline their production lines and reduce their labor costs.
That's a perfect example. Second, technology can be a driver of differentiation. New technologies can enable companies to create innovative products and services that offer unique features, superior performance, or enhanced customer experiences. Think about the way that smartphones have transformed the way we communicate, access information, and entertain ourselves. The companies that have been most successful in this space have been those that have been able to leverage technology to create truly differentiated offerings.
And it seems like the pace of technological change is only accelerating. Companies need to be constantly innovating and adapting to stay ahead of the curve.
That's right. Porter emphasizes the importance of having a technology strategy, a clear plan for how you will use technology to achieve your competitive goals. This involves making choices about which technologies to invest in, how to integrate those technologies into your operations, and how to manage the risks associated with technological change.
And it seems like one of the biggest risks with technology is a possibility of being disrupted by a new innovation that you didn't see coming.
That's a huge risk. Porter talks about the concept of disruptive technologies, innovations that create entirely new markets and value networks, often displacing existing players in the process. Think about the way that the internet disrupted the music industry, or the way that ride-sharing services have disrupted the taxi industry. These disruptive technologies can come out of nowhere and completely change the rules of the game.
So companies need to be constantly scanning the horizon, looking for potential threats and opportunities, and being prepared to adapt their strategies accordingly.
Exactly. Porter emphasizes the importance of flexibility, agility, and a willingness to experiment. In today's rapidly changing world, companies that cling to outdated business models or resist change are likely to be left behind.
This has been an incredible discussion so far. We've covered so much ground, from competitive dynamics and cost analysis to differentiation and technology strategy. But I know there's still more to explore in Porter's world of competitive advantage. What other key concepts or frameworks does he introduce in the book?
There are quite a few. He dives into the complexities of diversification, explores the challenges of attacking established industry leaders, and provides a framework for understanding how industries evolve over time. He also dedicates a whole chapter to the organizational implications of competitive advantage, arguing that even the most brilliant strategy is useless if you don't have the right organizational structure and processes in place to implement it.
It seems like Porter leaves no stone unturned. I'm eager to delve into these remaining topics and see what other gems of wisdom he has to offer. Shall we continue our exploration in part 3?
Absolutely. There's still much to uncover in competitive advantage. See you in part 3.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Michael E. Porter's competitive advantage.
It's been a whirlwind tour through the world of business strategy.
We've covered a lot of ground, the five forces to generic strategies, cost analysis, differentiation, technology strategy.
And even those fascinating insights into competitive dynamics.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our discussion, I'd love to get your take on some of the key takeaways from the book. What are the big ideas that our listeners should walk away with? What are the nuggets of wisdom that they can apply to their own careers or businesses?
Well, I think one of the most important takeaways is that competitive advantage is not a destination, it's a journey. It's an ongoing process of analysis, adaptation, and response.
So it's not enough to just develop a great strategy once and then sit back and relax.
Exactly. You need to be constantly monitoring the competitive landscape, evaluating your own performance, identifying areas for improvement, and adapting your strategy as needed. The business world is constantly evolving, and companies that fail to keep pace are likely to be left behind.
It seems like Porter is really emphasizing the importance of being proactive and forward-thinking.
Absolutely. He argues that companies need to develop a deep understanding of their industry, their customers, their competitors, and themselves. They need to be able to anticipate changes in the market, identify potential threats and opportunities, and adjust their strategies accordingly.
And he provides a set of tools and frameworks that can help companies make more informed strategic decisions.
That's right. The Five Forces framework helps companies analyze the competitive intensity of their industry.
Right.
The generic strategies framework provides a roadmap for choosing a competitive position.
Yeah.
The value chain framework helps companies identify areas where they can create cost advantages or differentiate themselves. And these are just a few examples. Porter's book is packed with practical tools and frameworks that companies can use to sharpen their strategic thinking.
Another big takeaway, I think, is that competitive advantage is about making choices.
You're right about that. Porter emphasizes that companies cannot be all things to all people. They need to make deliberate choices about how they compete, which customers they target, what products or services they offer, and how they position themselves in the market.
It seems like those choices are often about trade-offs. You can't be the cheapest and the most innovative. You can't serve every customer segment equally well.
Exactly. It's about understanding your strengths and weaknesses and focusing your resources on those areas where you can truly excel. It's about making tough decisions and saying no to certain opportunities in order to say yes to others that are more aligned with your strategic goals.
And once you've made those choices, it's crucial to be disciplined in executing your strategy.
Absolutely. Porter emphasizes the importance of aligning all aspects of your business with your chosen strategy. This includes your organizational structure, your systems and processes, your culture and values, and even your human resource practices.
It's about creating a cohesive and integrated approach where everyone in the organization is working towards the same goals.
And it's about being relentless in pursuing your strategy, even when faced with challenges or setbacks.
Porter also highlights the importance of being adaptable and responsive to changing market conditions.
That's right. He argues that even the best laid plans need to be adjusted as the market evolves. New technologies emerge, customer preferences shift, competitors make unexpected moves. Companies need to be able to sense these changes quickly, reassess their strategies, and make the necessary adjustments to stay ahead of the game.
It seems like Porter is really emphasizing the importance of flexibility, agility, and a willingness to experiment.
Those qualities are essential for success in today's rapidly changing business environment. Companies that cling to outdated business models or resist change are likely to be left behind. And Porter's book provides a wealth of insights and guidance for companies that are looking to thrive in this dynamic and challenging landscape.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into Michael E. Porter's masterpiece.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
And we hope our listeners have found it just as insightful and thought-provoking as we have.
Porter's work is a testament to the power of clear thinking, rigorous analysis, and a deep understanding of the forces that shape competition in the business world.
His insights are as relevant today as they were when he first published the book, and they'll likely continue to be valuable for generations to come.
So as you move forward in your own career or business, keep Porter's principles in mind. Challenge your assumptions, analyze your costs, differentiate your offerings, and never underestimate the power of competition.
And always remember, the key to sustained success is creating and capturing value for your customers.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the world of business.
We'll see you on the next episode of Books and Bytes.